Hello, my name's Michael Conneely, and this is a video about how to analyse an eclipse. So eclipses essentially release dammed up tension in our lives. So they're very like an earthquake. So basically what happens with an earthquake is that tension builds up and builds up and builds up in the Earth's crust until eventually the tension breaks, the earthquake happens and the tension is over. An eclipse has that effect, but there's like a twist to the tale, because if we're very off course in our life, we experience it as terrible downfall, etc., with the divine intention of putting us on course. But if we're on course in our life, then we experience the eclipse as like a flowering of part of our life, of our talents or whatever. And then the other twist to the tale of interpreting an eclipse is that they release shadow material. You see, basically we have our lunar self, which is quite sort of emotional and full of shadows, and our solar self that is more like the king of the kingdom, the divine charioteer who drives the chariot of self, strategizing the direction and so forth. But both the sun and the moon are powerful, and eclipses can really undam the shadow side. And the shadow side includes talents we didn't know we had, we weren't allowed to know, or it includes wounds and guilts and secrets. And of course, note that the day of an eclipse needs to be taken carefully. There can be a feeling of fear and tension. Be aware when an eclipse is going to happen. So, what I'm going to do is summarise like the major headings by which you'd analyse an eclipse, but there is a web page on my Star Wheel Astrology website which gives a lot more interpretation guideline. But first of all, you analyse what house the eclipse is falling in. What are the affairs of that house? You certainly look at, does the eclipse affect one of your planets? And if it's the sun, moon or ascendant that the eclipse is on, that's utterly major. You look at the sign the eclipse is in, because each sign obviously has qualities, and the eclipse can undam our connections with the qualities of the sign that the eclipse falls in. So I'm now just going to briefly go through the analysis of an example chart. And so I've got the chart of this person as chart 1 in the associated blog, the address for which is just below the YouTube screen. And basically what we can look at, say, the Western chart, which comes first, which has ascendant in Western Sagittarius, Sun in Western Aquarius, and where's the Moon? And Moon in early Western Capricorn. So have a look at that chart. You may want to pause the video, and then have a quick look at chart 2. Now, chart 2 is a bi-wheel. The outer chart is the chart for the eclipse of the 5th of June, and the inner chart is the person's birth chart. And you can very clearly see that the moon is exactly on this person's ascendant. That's why I've chosen this chart example. Okay, so having noticed that this person is having an utterly major event happening on the 5th of June, let's go back to chart 1, the Western chart. Just a few comments. So you can see that, for example, in chart aspect shapes, this person has a yod, a finger of God. And so that is the long thin triangle with 2 green sides and a blue base, pointing at Rahu, the north node of the moon. So their incarnational destiny is a very special focus for them to understand and embrace. And the thing about a yod, quite often we find it very difficult to embrace the nature of an apex planet. We tend to work away at its issues at one remove. And notice that at the base of the yod, there's a psychic eye. Mercury, Venus, sextile, Neptune, apex, Ketu, the south node. So pretty psychic yod, pretty psychic guy, with the yod and the psychic eye working together. Just look, before we go back, at the Psychodynamic Western astrology chart, and that is chart 5 in the associated blog. And so you can clearly see that according to the strict aspect rules governing the drawing up of psychodynamic astrology natal charts, this person has a grand trine. So Jupiter is trine Venus Mercury, and Jupiter and Venus Mercury are both of them trine the apex planets, which are Pluto conjunct Uranus. So we'll be coming on to that later because there's a big activation there at the moment. So just go back now to chart 1 and you'll see that Chiron is square the nodal axis. So this is absolutely huge in evolutionary Western astrology. To have a planet square the nodal axis has a major meaning in this life, created by past life material and material left undone in past life. And notice that Chiron is opposed by Pluto-Uranus. You know, the wound includes jarring energies and power energies. But Chiron is our existential wound, in the healing of which we can become the healer of others. Note, looking at chart 1, that the sun here is unaspected. And so basically it's cut off from the rest of the chart. And that can have, well, one meaning that the person may sort of inhabit their sun energy and be rather cut off from the gifts and challenges of the rest of the chart. It can create like a tunnel vision focus on the sun. Indeed, Ayatollah Khomeini had unaspected sun. But equally it means that the person may find it difficult to contact their sun, the needed king of the kingdom, the needed divine charioteer that drives the chariot of self, the divine charioteer who holds in his hands the reins that go to the horses that pull the chariot of self, and those horses are the other planets. So, you know, an unaspected planet or an unaspected combination of planets is something very important to be aware of. Oh, and also notice that Saturn is stated to be on a limb, both in this chart and in chart 5, the psychodynamic Western chart. And so when a planet's on a limb like that, we find it difficult to access the nature, energies and gifts of that planet, you know, unless it's activated by a transit or a progression or something. And so to have Saturn on a limb can be difficult to encompass Saturn's energies of materiality, focus, hard work, discipline and patience, and certainly difficulty to integrate them with other qualities. And notice that Saturn is in Pisces, which would intensify that, and Chiron is in Pisces. So I'm just going through this so that we can have a deeper understanding of the actual impact of the eclipse in this individual. So, yes, let's look, before we go into the other Western chart, let's look at chart 5, the psychodynamic chart, and let's just focus on that grand trine. Well, basically a grand trine points to a huge talent, but it is not one which can be harvested by doing nothing. It is not one that will come to harvest automatically. If we have a grand trine, we have to work at the qualities of our grand trine, otherwise it's a ruined crop. But if we work away at those qualities, it becomes a golden harvest. And just to note that Mercury is included in the grand trine, Mercury in Capricorn, and I'm mentioning that because of the importance of Mercury in the eclipse. So let's now look at the Vedic astrology. That's chart 3, the Vedic natal chart for this person, and chart 4, the chart for the eclipse of the 5th of June. So you can very clearly see that the ascendant of this person is at 22, Vedic Scorpio, in Jyesta Nakshatra. And you can very clearly see from the chart 4 that the moon of the eclipse is at 21, 25, Scorpio in Jyesta Nakshatra. So this is a major eclipse on the ascendant, and the ascendant is about our body and our health, how we project into the world, our sense of self. So it's going to be major transformation being offered to this person. Now notice that the eclipse is in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars. So not only the first house will be activated, but also the 6th house, which could be about enemies, but more likely in this case, 6th house of health, healing and right living. And notice that the ruler of Scorpio and Aries, the 1st and 6th house, it is Mars, and Mars is retrograde. Mars will therefore not be such easy energies for the person to grasp hold of and express and get right. Incidentally, Mars is in the healer's sign of Virgo. So here we've already picked up that the eclipse will activate the ascendant and the 1st house. It will activate the planet Mars, and it will also activate 6th house Aries and 11th house Virgo. But there's crucially more than that, because the eclipse and this person's ascendant is actually in Jyesta Nakshatra, and vast learning comes when we bring in the nakshatras. I wouldn't be without them. What they've given me in my life is so magnificent in terms of perception and spiritual growth possibility. So basically the nature of Jyesta is the elder, and so positively this eclipse would unlock the person's standing in the world as an elder, a teacher, for example. But notice that Jyesta is ruled by Mercury. Jyesta Nakshatra is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is also this person's Atma Karika, his soul indicator. So in some ways the most important planet in his chart, his Atma Karika, is receiving eclipse energy. Huge importance therefore this time of eclipse. So it has to be said that the energy of Jyesta is associated with nemesis, with a possible sort of downfall, and the divine purpose of that is so that the person can heal their egoic faults and embody the role of elder in a spiritual way. That may be a function here. Certainly there will be a healing of wounds, and we're coming to that. And it may be certain ways of thinking and working will be highlighted into big question by this eclipse and maybe abandoned. That sort of nemesis, abandoned in favour an even greater and more successful expression of self. So just to conclude with looking at chart 5, the Western Psychodynamic chart, and basically you can see on the rim of that chart 2 age points. One is a black circle with a black cross in it. The other is 3 concentric red circles. This is using Megastar software, which is wonderful. This is accurate. This is powerful. And so the black circle with a black cross in it is said to be our individuation age point, the unfoldment of our awareness of our psychological self and all the parts of it, including the split-off parts, and the ability to therefore manage ourself under greater consciousness. And that age point starts off at the ascendant and goes anti-clockwise round the rim of the chart, taking 72 years to go right round, and therefore going through the signs, through the houses and across the planets. And then the other age point is the nodal age point, the whisper of your soul to you from the astral, and that is the 3 concentric red circles. And that starts off at the position of the north node of the moon in your birth chart and goes the other way, clockwise, round the rim of the chart. And look where his has got to on the day of the eclipse. It is conjunct Pluto-Uranus. Indeed, in the 9th house, indeed in the most intense central portion of the 9th house, spirituality and higher learning. We have to bring in the other Western chart, which tells us that Chiron is opposite Uranus and Pluto. So this person is being offered like a healing catharsis, which they will use to raise to the light their wounds, so as not to be weighed down by them, so as to be able to be in fuller and easier reception of the divine light that comes to each of us through the crown chakra. And the effect of this will be a huge positive opening of the way they project into the world, eclipse on the ascendant. So yes, you can get in touch with me for a reading at my Star Wheel Astrology buy page. There is a page on my Star Wheel Astrology website about how to interpret eclipses, and the link for that is in this associated blog, and the blog's link is below the video screen in YouTube. You can enroll on one of my courses, Master Vedic Astrology website. I do several courses, quite a number of courses, in both Vedic astrology and also Western psychodynamic and Western evolutionary astrology, indeed with the option of crossover between Vedic and Western, if that's what you want. So I hope to hear from you. And everybody who is affected by this eclipse, all blessings, all success.